Man in isolation demands extra smoke breaks, fakes illness symptoms trying to manipulate us. We transfer him to a more restrictive quarantine instead. Posted by Astacask. I'm a paramedic, and lately I've been working at an isolation facility in the Canadian oil field, and it's just terrible. It brings out the worst in a lot of people, and it's kind of understandable. And once COVID is over, you could give me the choice between going back to this job or living with my member inside an anthill for the rest of my life, and I'd be slathering my loins in honey before you finish that sentence. How it works is we have a lot of large oil facilities in the area, and spring is when they shut them down, bring in hordes of workers from coast to coast, and perform maintenance as quickly as possible to get that sweet black gold flowing again. It was pretty much universally ignored how effing bad an idea that would be this year, and you'd never guess what resulted: a big old dumpster fire. An increase in cases was planned for. One entire work camp that could accommodate 1,110 was set aside for positive or symptomatic patients, and a few wings at another camp for about 200 people, where we kept asymptomatic close contact cases, no symptoms or confirmed sickness. The oil companies paid the hospitality bill, and the workers that couldn't isolate at home had somewhere to stay. For anyone trying to picture a work camp, it's less gulag and more Motel 6. Private bathroom, single or double-sized bed, TV, Wi-Fi, yada yada. Just picture a mediocre motel, but a little smaller room size. 3 square meals a day, cooked in a kitchen or dining hall. It's usually served buffet style, but delivered to isolation rooms by medical staff because the kitchen staff's union rightfully said, heck no. The only thing that sucks about this camp is being isolated and monitored. I don't make the rules, and I don't even technically enforce them. I just tell people what the government has made law and why it's inadvisable to break them, or, in other words, F around and find out. People were free to leave at will, but they'd face serious legal issues. It wasn't a prison, and I didn't make the regulations. 14 full days in isolation was the mandate, and yes, it was inconvenient for everyone so required. I ended up at the smaller site where we didn't store active cases, thankfully, not because of risk, but the 1,100 person facility, being the dumping ground, was filling up fast and manpower was stretched to the breaking point. Our duties were mostly very non-EMS related. Drop off food, deliver booze, invade faces with nasal swabs, vitals, check people in, chaperone smoke breaks, and miscellaneous concierge things. My coworkers and I made efforts for our patients because it really is a stressful and crappy situation for them. Most people were pretty chill, if not outright pleasant toward us, but unfortunately we had a sizable group of loud, mean-spirited, entitled, and belligerent man-children. These enormous a-holes complained about everything, from the government to the quality of steaks that they weren't paying for, and they also serenaded us with threats, profanity, death camp comparisons, general prickishness, conspiracies, anti-vaccine garbage, and angry yet vague tirades about their rights. This kind of hot garbage isn't uncommon for this province. We're basically Canada's Florida Panhandle, and come complete with all the lunatics and tomfoolery. This is not a work environment I greatly enjoyed, but I did have a moment of catharsis when I clapped back at our standout problem child. Mr. P, as I'll call him, was that rare 1 in a billion a-hole, a repugnant narcissist and sharp as a marble. His Medal of Honor citation includes the following highlights: hurling his lunch at the wall opposite his room door because he didn't like tuna, threats against other patients and one staff member, staggering out of his room to pass out in the hallway, wrecked on rum and near buck naked, perving on female staff members, smoking constantly in his room with the door propped open, turning it up to 11 while watching adult movies, screaming at an adjacent parking lot from his window while trashed at 9 a.m., and sneaking out on the back door while unescorted whenever he felt like it, and to meet a delivery driver after we took his booze away, all while breaking quarantine. Hilariously and obviously trying to forge the date on his information sheet taped to his door so he'd be out sooner, but we track it all in Excel, and, well, being himself. All this was in a 72-hour period, and we literally couldn't kick him out. Where else would he go? He was under quarantine. An amazing amount of forgiveness was extended to him by the camp operator and the oil company because of the stress of being quarantined. Eventually, Mr. P gets a visit and talking to by the RCMP, the police, call from his boss and the camp manager, all of which seem to have made an impact. All parties were thoroughly fed up with his crap, and although he wouldn't be evicted, he would be, if he carried on, be facing a ban for life from every site owned by the oil company, fired from his job, and fined by the police. With his booze confiscated, I assumed he might behave closer to the 55-year-old man he is, but as it turns out, that was naive. I interacted with him more than anyone else, and I bit that bullet because I'm the veteran, the most jaded, and also, for some reason, he didn't sexually harass me. Unhappy with being unable to smoke in his room or wander around breaking quarantine as he chose, he picked me to use as his grievance. Every day we had 8 15-minute breaks scheduled to take people to smoke or just to get outside. As a chaperone, we would ensure no patients would touch door handles. We'd politely remind them about distance and not to pass out smokes to others. Mr. P didn't like the schedule, demanded, not asked, for more breaks, longer breaks, and breaks at the times he wanted. We'd honor some requests for favors, usually, perhaps take a worker or for a couple extra breaks. Doing the odd favor never bothered me for normal patients, but in his case, I would rather lick a cheese grater than expend 1 extra calorie for his comfort. My response to his whining was a hard no and no negotiation. He could follow the schedule or risk his job by smoking in the room again. He wasn't special, and we were just staffed enough to handle our workload already. I might have done him a solid if he promised me that he would use that time to go play in highway traffic. He'd grabbed my attention when I was handing out some lunches, and this is when the above request was gleefully denied. It was about an hour later when we got a call from Mr. P. He wasn't feeling good and he needed a checkup. I grabbed my kit and monitor thinking I had paramedic crap to do, but not believing I'd be lucky enough to have him actually be dying. He opens the door complaining of a cough and sore, dry throat. He put on the full act and I did my due diligence for funsies, took full vitals and notes, and he then piped up with some conspicuously prepared lines. "It's just stuffy in here. I don't think I need any medicine, just some air. Extra fresh air would probably clear this up. Yada, yada." His brain must be smooth enough to skip across a pond if he put faith in this cartoonish scheme. I just imagine his inner dialogue. "I'll just fake sick to get the thing he just refused to give me an hour ago. No one will suspect a thing." "Well," I say to him, "thank you for reporting your development of symptoms. If you could have your suitcases packed in the next hour, a vehicle will be arriving to take you to this other facility." Baffled, his master plan crumbled instantly. He made a futile effort to backtrack. Was he lying? Extremely likely. Just his bad luck, I take my patients at their word. I reported it, recorded it, and sent it up the ladder to my superiors immediately. No backsies, butthole. We ship out symptomatic and positive cases, and that made him someone else's problem, already a W. The other place is also much worse. Between the huge and unexpected inflow of cases, staff shortage, staff being overwhelmed, they get maybe 1 to 2 smoke breaks a day. Food is worse, late or arrives cold, rooms are smaller, and with all the positive cases, their security is increased. Sucks, I feel for all the guys there. I'll accept him. Oh, and because he developed symptoms, his quarantine days were reset from 7 to 14. Dude talked himself into another week of legally mandated isolation. What if you had to live with this guy? Let me know in the comments below. These next 2 stories are awesome and really funny. Let's start. Whatever chainsaw I want, you say? Posted by Nomad65555. This malicious compliance is not my own, but of a friendly, vindictive old man who I'll call Fred that I worked with for around 5 months. As many of you know, I, an 18-year-old male, do tree work for a living, and I have for around 2 years now. My boss, who I'll call Duncan, is a 32-year-old hotshot and the owner of our small company, who can sometimes be a real tool when things aren't going fast enough on a job. Now, Duncan has an old family friend named Fred. Fred worked with Duncan's stepfather at a cement plant for 20 years and is his stepfather's best friend. Fred also retired from said cement plant. Fred is the kind of man who would give you the shirt off his back while being an absolute vindictive smart aleck about you not having a shirt. However, Fred was working for Duncan as a favor since Duncan was understaffed at the time. Because of this, Fred couldn't give a flying flip about his job or what Duncan said or did. Fred took as many breaks as he wanted, when he wanted to, and wouldn't hesitate to tell you where to stick your opinion if you said something about it. Fred's also a complete bull of a man who stands at a hearty 6 foot 3 inches and 275 pounds, and easily makes Duncan, 5'10" and 160, look like a shrimp. So usually, Duncan isn't too quick to bother him. So one day we were all doing our thing on the job. We had a big old pin oak to take down, so we were all in our usual positions. Jake up in the bucket truck, James running our loader, and Fred and I chipping brush and shooting the breeze, although I'll admit we were slightly slacking off. Duncan decided he was going to sharpen all the chainsaws that were not currently in use, so he gets to work. Now, for those of you who don't know, sharpening a saw takes a while, and on top of that, all our saws were extremely dull, so they took a lot of sharpening in 95-degree heat, while being stooped down on the door of one of the boxes on our bucket truck. Duncan was sharpening saws for the better part of 2 hours. That's 8 saws. When he finished, we had the vast majority of the tree cut down. All the branches were off, and Fred and I had long since shut down the chipper. And we were taking our lunch since we had nothing to do, as wood is moved from the ground to the dump trailer by James in the loader. For some reason, the fact that we had 20 minutes more work infuriated Duncan. This is especially odd because the tree was coming down very quickly compared to usual, as it was Friday and we were all hoping to cut off early as we sometimes did. Duncan flew off the handle, screaming at us for the better part of 10 minutes, which ironically extended us to 30 minutes more on the job rather than 20, and he ended his tirade with, "I'm leaving to go do estimates finish and go cut firewood at the yard. You will not be cutting off a second before 3:30. As Duncan stormed away, Fred piped up from the back of the group, just as sweet as pie with anticipation dripping from his voice. "Hey, Lipstick, which one you want us to use?" To which Duncan replied, "I don't give a frick," and stormed away. Me and Fred smiled at each other, thinking the same thing. When we arrived back at the yard, we began getting saws off the truck, from the smallest of trim saws to the largest brand spanking new steel MS-881 Magnum with a 42-inch bar that we used to cut particularly large stubs. Me and Fred both grabbed a saw and fired him up. We began to cut and cut and cut and cut. For almost 3 hours we cut firewood, making sure to hit the dirt with the saws as much as possible, and going through every saw until they were almost unusable from how dull they were. Trust me, if anyone knows how to dull a saw quick, it's a tree professional. Fred and I were having the time of our lives, dancing and singing and cracking jokes while we cut, while screaming to be heard over the painful wailing of the saws being tortured. When 3:30 rolled around, we threw the saws back in the truck and went home, and I still swear to this day that I heard Fred singing at the top of his lungs as he rolled out of the lane in a cloud of black smoke, which may have been his crankshaft eating some gaskets. Monday, when we get to work, we rolled out to the job site, and Duncan fired up the mammoth steel to crash a huge hickory tree in the middle of the woods. He began to cut, or should I say grind, the tree. The wood was smoking from the terrible amount of friction from a saw that was as dull as it could get. Duncan stopped. He checked the chain. He got another saw and checked the chain. Dull. He went through every saw and checked chains, getting redder and redder. He walked over to me and Fred. "Fred, Blake, why is every saw dull?" To which Fred responded, "Well, Duncan, you told us that you don't give a frick which saw we used, so we used them all. That shouldn't be an issue, right, since you don't give a frick." To which Duncan sighed, knowing exactly what he did, and walked off to sharpen all the saws again. Fred was, is, and always will be my hero and my best friend. He is currently back to living the retired life of working on cars and fishing. Many days I miss him and his offhanded comments, but I'm carrying on his legacy of smart buttery. Just as a disclaimer, Duncan is not a bad boss at all. In fact, he's the best boss I've ever had. He just has this mindset that time is money and that some things should go faster than they possibly ever could. Man, I'll tell you what, real quick, this story reminds me of when you go tell somebody, "Hey, put some peanut butter on this sandwich," and they actually put the jar on your bread because you didn't tell them to open the jar first and get the knife out and put the peanut butter on the bread. Oh, this is a funny story. I love it. Way to go, dude. The future's so bright, I gotta wear shades, posted by recommendation number 191. I worked up north in oil and gas doing site facility maintenance, and I started the job when the boom was happening, but we soon started down the backside and cuts were made. In order to cut costs, they cut our overtime, our hours, took away our flights because it was fly in and fly out, and generally made life miserable. I could see the writing on the wall, and I was an unticketed carpenter, so I decided to go back to school and get my JM papers. Before I went on my school break, we got a new journeyman, and he asked us how we can live on X amount of wages and pay for our flights as well. We told him that our wages are X plus 10. The company was paying new hires about $10 an hour less than us, which explained why they were trying to get people to quit so that they could replace them with cheaper labor. I had arrangements to do 3rd and 4th all year together, but as my school day was coming up, they started talking about putting off my year 4, messing me around. It took me over a year waiting to get into that class, so I wasn't going to put it off. I decided to quit if they messed me, but I didn't tell them. So this is near the end of the calendar year, and school was November and December for year 3 and January, February for year 4. The first thing that I did was to schedule 100% of my dental benefits for December, me and my 2 kids. I also scheduled whatever else we could do dentally for the new year, early January. We also had a Visa account that was $1,000 per year for health spending. You could use it at the dentist for whatever wasn't covered. You could go to the pharmacy, the optometrist, those kind of things. So I went to Joe's Optometry and bought some sweet glasses for reading that had a picture of a horse with a guy with a stick and a little ball on it. I also got every bell and whistle for the lenses. Perfect customer. But that's not the compliance. The salesperson, bless her soul, offered me sunglasses and I said I couldn't do that, it's only for health. She told me the insurance company doesn't get the itemized receipt, they just see Joe's Optical for X amount of dollars. Oh yeah, I'm in with some sweet Ray-Bans with 2 pairs of polarized lenses, no problem. So the company I worked for had a bunch of contracts, and there were about 800 employees in total. I'd say about 60% of them were single males, about 10% females, and the rest married guys. We had a junior Sparky who is all about bling, so I told him he can go to the optometrist with his card and get sunglasses. I told everyone on our shift, screw them, free sunglasses. I might not have overtime anymore, but hey, thanks for the sunglasses. And waited. And nothing happened. I was expecting everyone to be sending messages thanking me for the loophole, but nothing. So I showed Sparky the receipt and my Visa card number to prove that I had done it. The next day, I see him on Facebook with a new pair of sunglasses, saying that he had also ordered some limited edition Ferrari sunglasses from his local optometrist. Initially, he didn't believe me, but now he was all in. I picked the Sparky because he was about bling, but he was also with the company since day one, and he knew absolutely everyone, including people on the other job sites. 800 people. Back to me. Because of the turnaround schedule, I was scheduled to go back to work somewhere around January 10th after they had unilaterally changed the deal. In school, we weren't allowed to miss days, so my kids and I had all of our dental work done in the Christmas break on the January side. Lucky for me. I also asked the dentist if I could pay it forward and pay for 2 cleaning sessions sometime in the next year. I used our Visa health card. What was left, I went back to the optometrist and I got 2 more pairs of sunglasses. I used up my Visa card and my yearly dental allowance in the first week of January. I officially quit the day before they forced me back to work. My coworkers told me in the middle of January there was a company-wide meeting about sweeping changes to the benefit program. They were changing companies to become more streamlined, and the benefits naturally were sharply decreased. The Visa health card vanished. My guess is because they had a $500,000 optometry bill. I finished school in the top 3 and happily had $10,000 worth of dental and $2,000 worth of sunglasses and glasses paid for in the last week of December and the first week of January. Not only do I wear my sunglasses at night, but the future's so bright, I gotta wear shades. Oh, that is some malicious compliance, man. You made out like a bandit. No joke. Way to go, OP. Comment this secret phrase below. I found the secret phrase. Be sure to check another video, and I'll see you there.